Oh, oopsie daisy. I dropped a plesiosaur ornament. Slop, can you grab that while you're down there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, would you look at that? There's a present under here that somebody forgot about.
Oh, yeah, I got that for you, Slopstache.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
Well, oh, hey, look, our guests are here.
Ah, yes. Robert, Stephanie,
And all of our other special friends.
we are so very glad that you could join us.
Time goes by so fast. I feel like we just put up this old Christmas tree, and now it's already time to start packing it away.
And to think, today is already December 1487th, 2020.
Oh, what's that you say? It's New Year's Day, January 1st, 2025 tomorrow?
That's where you're wrong, you silly geese.
I'm afraid Slopstache here is right, old chums. You see, we never escaped 2020.
We certainly never got over, nor even really addressed, the trauma of this never-ending hell year.
You're just gonna have to trust us on this one. It's still 2020.
And it will always be 2020.
A never-ending cavalcade of deteriorating quality of life, appalling headlines, and really bad vibes.
It would seem that, collectively, our world has fallen into a bleak and dystopian version of Groundhog Day. You know, the 1993 film written and directed by Egon Spengler, the one where Bill Murray has to live the same day over and over again until he learns a very special lesson about life, love, and happiness.
That's us right now. Only instead of learning to play the piano and how to speak French in a quaint little New England hamlet, we have to endure a litany of human rights violations, imperialist war crimes, and worst of all, an ever-increasing presence of Elon Musk in our everyday conversation.
That is, of course, until we all learn our lesson.
Oh yes, the very special lesson we must all learn so that we can finally find our way out of the year 2020.
I know what you're asking yourselves right now. What exactly is the lesson we all must learn?
What must we do to finally progress to January 1st, 2021?
How do we escape this miserable year?
What is to be done?
I'm afraid we don't have all the answers to your questions, old friends.
But we do have a few ideas we'd like to share.
First, let's recognize just how confusing things are right now, politically.
Things are frightening, bewildering, overwhelming. Most people are unhappy with the direction things are going in this world. It seems like everyone can agree that things are bad, but nobody knows what to do. People feel helpless, isolated, alienated, powerless.
But at the same time, there has been a lot of evidence that a lot of people desperately want change and are willing to fight for that change.
The Black Lives Matter movement showed that millions of people in the USA and around the world are willing to stand up and fight for justice and equality. Between 15 and 30 million Americans reported that they participated in Black Lives Matter protests.
In the USA alone, the number of workers participating in major strike activity has skyrocketed. Since 2018, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that at least 1,500,000 workers have gone on strike.
That is more than 3 times as much documented participation in major strikes than the previous 6 years.
And on top of that, we've seen mass protests against the genocide in Palestine.
Huge protests against the overturning of Roe versus Wade.
Mutual aid organizations sprouting up all over the place to help people survive through economic crises and natural disasters.
A guy did a thing we can't talk about on YouTube.
And everyone loved it.
There certainly has been a lot of political activity as of late calling for radical change and social justice, but at the end of the day, we always seem to end up right back where we started.
Despite all this energy and political will to show up to protest and fight for equality, there has been very little progress in terms of affecting practical political change.
We've been facing just the opposite lately. The far right has seized control of every branch of government in the United States, and fascism's having a major resurgence in many other nations around the world.
It's not looking good, and it's especially frustrating because so many of us have worked so hard to try and stand up and speak out against all of the injustices we see all around us.
It begs the question, are we doing something wrong? Is there some fundamental flaw in our mindset and our strategy? Are we on the wrong path, Slopstache?
I think that's probably the wrong way to look at it. It's not that we're on the wrong path, it's that our journey has really only just begun.
I see what you mean. The contradictions of capitalism are becoming more clear with each passing day. As dissatisfaction mounts with the working class and the empire's facade continues to crumble, after decades of dormancy in the West, the proletariat begins to rise from its deep slumbering social consciousness.
People are getting pissed off because things suck so bad.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Unfortunately, because communism has been so heavily suppressed for such a long time in the West, workers almost completely lack class consciousness. And for that reason, the working class has only been able to rise to the level of spontaneous action.
Spontaneous action? What's that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Spontaneous action is an important first step towards revolution. Spontaneous actions are all the instinctive efforts of the masses to resist oppression and improve conditions. These efforts tend to stem from frustration and dissatisfaction with society, but lack a deliberate or conscious understanding of the nature of class oppression.
Are you saying that workers' strikes and protest movements are unplanned and uncoordinated?
Not at all. Spontaneous actions can be very sophisticated and organized endeavors. It's very important to understand that there's nothing wrong with spontaneous action. On the contrary, it's a good sign that the working class is beginning to develop awareness of the problems with capitalism.
Ah, yes. In this case, it would seem that the working class is indeed reawakening after many decades of atrophy and stagnation.
A century ago, workers were much more developed, you see. Communism was having an upsurge, and going into the 1930s, it really seemed like America might have its own communist revolution.
Unfortunately, communism in the West has suffered a lot of setbacks in the ensuing decades. The Red Scares, McCarthyism, the fall of the Soviet Union, Slavoj Žižek.
Say, wait a minute. Didn't you make a whole feature-length documentary saying good things about Slavoj Žižek?
We all make mistakes, Slop.
Don't I know it? Anyway, like we were saying, the fact that we are seeing so much spontaneous action lately, from worker strikes to radical uprisings, means that there is finally hope for rebuilding class consciousness for the first time in a very long time.
I see. What you're saying is that spontaneous action is reactive in nature, responding to immediate needs and grievances of the working class.
Exactly. Spontaneous actions might be planned and coordinated, but they are limited in scope. For instance, worker strikes are only concerned with workplace conditions and wage increases. Civil rights protests are only concerned with the grievances of particular segments of the working class. What's lacking is fully developed class consciousness, which would tie all of these movements together into one cohesive revolutionary movement.
Aha! So, the fact that spontaneous actions are focused on local or isolated issues is sort of a limiting factor.
Right! That's why we feel like we never make progress through spontaneous action. Even if a workers' strike succeeds or civil rights protest leads to some concessions, capitalism will continue to oppress workers collectively. That's why it feels like we keep ending up right back where we started.
So the missing ingredient would be communism. Workers need political education and organization so that all these disparate movements can be tied together into one big cohesive movement.
That's right! That's why it's vital for you, as someone who understands the true nature of capitalism, to step up and become a leader. Right now, you should be focused on teaching our fellow workers about the nature of capitalism and the ways in which capitalism is the root cause of all these problems we are struggling against in our daily lives.
Well, if you don't know where to begin, you can start by simply spreading agitation propaganda and educational materials. You know, disseminate revolutionary communist ideology right to the workers.
But you shouldn't be doing this on your own. You should join a revolutionary party and, along with your comrades, build and strengthen connections between the communist movement and other liberation struggles.
But wait a minute, Slopstache. I was talking to some guy on Reddit, see, and he told me we should all become class reductionists and ignore problems like racism, misogyny, and transphobia.
What? No. What the f are you talking about? Millions of workers right now are demonstrably energized and upset about how capitalism oppresses and divides workers through bigotry, white supremacy, patriarchy, chauvinism. Why wouldn't we want to harness all of that positive and progressive energy?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So communists should do our best to unite all of these disparate spontaneous actions and movements by recognizing the very valid concerns of the most oppressed and marginalized workers who have the most revolutionary potential, and show how communism would meaningfully address their concerns.
Right. Capitalism uses a divide and conquer strategy to keep workers fighting each other instead of identifying the real enemy, the capitalist ruling class.
I think a great example of what you're talking about here is the rabid scapegoating of immigrants in this day and age. Capitalists want us to hate our fellow workers who come from different nations. They want us to blame immigrants for problems that are actually caused by capitalism.
Exactly. Capitalism is the root cause of all these forms of oppression, and this should be relatively easy to explain to our fellow workers. Communists just need to develop messaging that ties the problems workers are already concerned with to the root problems of class oppression.
As Ho Chi Minh once said, the job of the communist is to develop the good aspects of the working class while negating reactionary aspects. The fact that so many millions of workers are concerned with the suffering of oppressed people is a very good thing. We just need to provide some direction and leadership to all these different movements to show them that communist revolution is the only true and lasting solution to things like bigotry, xenophobia, and terrible work conditions.
And there you have it. That's the mission of the working class, to solidify into one organized revolutionary movement.
For centuries, the ruling class has splintered and fractured workers by fomenting bigotry and division. And this fracturing of the working class is precisely what's given fascists an opening to seize so much power in our contemporary era.
And liberals have been complicit in this process by paying lip service to the disparate grievances of various oppressed segments of the population without offering a cohesive and coherent framework that addresses the root problem of capitalism. Bourgeois liberals have acted as veritable Pied Pipers of the working class, leading us down a primrose path that has ended in failure after failure.
Now we stand at an important threshold. All we have to do is organize, build parties and programs that teach workers to become conscious of the determining role that capitalism plays in dividing the workers and setting us against each other in countless ways.
The spontaneous upsurge of the masses in the West proceeded and continues with such rapidity that the young communist movement proved unprepared to meet these gigantic tasks. This unpreparedness is our common misfortune, the misfortune of all Western communists. The upsurge of the masses proceeded and spread with uninterrupted continuity. It not only continued in the place where it began, but spread to the new localities and to the new strata of the population. Under the influence of the working class movement, there was a renewed ferment among the student youth, among the intellectual generally, and even among gig workers. Revolutionaries, however, lagged behind this upsurge, both in their theories and their activity. They failed to establish a constant and continuous organization capable of leading the whole movement.
Yeah, that f***ing blows, man.
Well, that's all the more reason for communists to get more serious about rising up to the task that stands so clearly before us. If we can organize our movement along class lines and educate the working class, if we can teach workers to understand capitalism and the historic mission of the working class to end capitalism and class society, then nothing will be able to stop the revolution.
Say, that reminds me. Why don't you go ahead and open up that present I got for you there, Slop?
Oh, I forgot about that. Golly! My own copy of The Worldview and Methodology of Marxism-Leninism, Lun and Nguyen's translation of the Vietnamese curriculum on dialectical materialism.
That's right. And there's a copy for you as well, and you, for free at banyanhouse.org/shop. You can get the ebook right there. It's totally free.
Reading the book would give any communist a head start in the revolutionary philosophy that will guide the workers to victory and liberation.
And part 2, which covers historical materialism, is coming out in the next month or two.
Boy, howdy!
It's exciting, I know. Hey, we want to thank you all for joining us. We're so glad that you can spend this never-ending year with us here at NonCompete. We hope to see you next year, eventually. In the meantime, I'm EJ.
I'm Slopstache.
Take care of each other. Now, get this f***ing plesiosaur out of the tree! Let's get all these goddamn ornaments off this f***ing tree!
Oh.
We got a revolution to perform!
And go read a book!
And join an organization and get out of your house! Do something! For the love of Pete's sake! Golly! Gosh!
Oh, I really like this one, you know?
That's a nice one.
Yeah,
I like the raccoon.
Suits me. Yeah, I like the raccoon too.
Yeah.
To learn more about spontaneous action and class consciousness, check out What Is to Be Done by Vladimir Ilyich Lenin at your local library.